to Shanmugam IAS Academy, and today's editorial analysis of 29th January 2022. Initial heading here is the topic is the budgeting for the education emergency. Why we are studying this thing is because the budget session is coming later this month, and what is exactly happening and in the educational system. So we are going to study in this editorial today. So in the current budget session, how much money the central and state governments will allocate to the education and what purpose should be a matter of public concern, and it has been a debate from so many days. And even before the pandemic, public spending on education in most states was below that of the other middle income countries. This is what happened. So it has been a great debate, like how much they will allocate to the education here in this budget session. So this is what we are going to study in this editorial today. And the next thing is that the ramp up of public spending on education. So what is exactly is this? Because actually we faced with an unprecedented education emergency, that is this time to substantially ramp up this public spending on the education, and it has to be make it more effective. This is what the thing is now. And the inexplicably, however, it actually the last, that is 2021 to 22 budget, in the midst that the gravest education crisis was the time that because of this corona and all, the trend was in the opposite direction for the central government and many state governments. This is what happened. The central government's allocation for the education department was slashed compared to the previous year. So actually in the last budget, so they said it was said that the allocation for the education department was slashed as compared to the previous years. And of the other major states and Delhi, either reduced or just maintained their budget allocation for education departments. That is the period from 2021 to 22 as compared to 2020 to 21. And 7 states are marginally increased their allocation by 2 to 5%. This is what happened. And in the education system should be meaningful and structured, and the learning opportunity. What exactly under this we'll study. The education system actually now needs not only an infusion of resources for multiple years. So that is not the only thing here we are talking. The education system now needs not only the infusion of resources, but also the strengthened focus on the needs of the poor and the disadvantaged children. This is also the other objective. Not only the infusion of resources, the other objectives to strengthen and focus on the needs of the poor and the disadvantaged children. And more than 260 million children enrolled in the preschool and school, especially in the government schools, did not have a meaningful structured learning opportunities. And during these 20 months of school closures, they have faced a lot of difficulties, and they have lost the basic literacy and numeracy skills that has happened, and even the habit of learning. And millions have disengaged from the education because of this pandemic, and due to a lack of contact with the teachers. Even when the schools started reopening in October, they were operating only as a half schedule. This is also has happened. We all know these things, and some states have still not opened these primary schools, and state governments rushed to close the primary schools first in the early January, because in this early January this year we closed the schools because of the Omicron. And most major states spent in the range of 2.5 to 3% the state income that is on the education. And according to the Ministry of Education's analysis of budgeted expenditure on education, this is important. This analysis from Ministry of Education is very important. Actually this compares with the 3% of GDP that lower income countries spent, and the low income countries, they have increased their spending from the more than like 0.3%. They have increased their spending on education of GDP in the same period, and it was not given by anyone. It is given by this World Bank. The education finance was in 2021. And what are the other areas which we need to be focused here? The increased public spending alone is a necessary but not sufficient condition to address all these problems. That is what exactly I have already told you, and it has to be spent on how effectively resources are used are important. That is, giving the resources is not the thing. How effectively these resources are being used is very important. It is clear what additional resources are required for. The needs include, what are the needs exactly here, because the main needs are listed here. The back to school campaigns and re-enrollment drives, which are important. And another thing, the nutrition programs to address this malnutrition, and the reorganization of the curriculum to the help children learn languages and mathematics in particular. This is important. And support their socio emotional development, especially in the early grades. And teacher training and ongoing support, this is also very important, which has to include an additional learning materials and additional teachers and teaching aids where required, and collection and data analysis of data. Many state governments and the central government have been spending public resources to use technology in education. And what is the need to look at this pandemic as an opportunity? We should take this pandemic as an opportunity. How the disaster which is caused by this pandemic could be the opportunity to reverse the chronic under funding of India's public education system. This can be an opportunity. We can take this as an opportunity. Under funding of this India's public education system, and UNESCO's 2030 framework for the action suggests that public education spending levels of between 4 to 6 percentage of GDP and 15 to 20 percentage on the, that is of public expenditure. This is what the UNESCO's 2030 framework has been suggested. And a recent World Bank study also notes that India has spent 14% of its budget on education, and as compared to other countries such as Vietnam and Indonesia, they have spent 5 to 20% on the education system. As compared to them, yeah, India has spent more. But since India has this, another point we have to include, because since India has a higher share of population as compared to other countries which I have mentioned now, under the age of 19 years than these countries, it should actually be allocating a greater share. Actually, the World Bank report said that India has spent 14% of its budget on education, which is very okay, fine. But according to our population, we have to allocate a greater share of budget than other countries. And what is the opacity, what is the vagueness of the education financial data? Actually, the combined central and the state government which is spending on education was estimated to be 8%. That is according to the economic survey of 2020 and 21. This is not done by anyone. This is given by the economic survey of 2020 to 21. And the education expenditure by other department has rising faster than by the education department at both central and state levels. However, this compositions of this expenditure is not readily available. The public expenditure which is on the elementary education and for other levels education, are rough estimates are here. So the estimation of education expenditure by other departments of the state government is even more crude. The ratio of education which is spending in other departments at the central level is used to estimate this for the each of the state. This very important step which has to be taken. And in the conclusion, we'll conclude with this thing, that is the funds being spent on the specific measures required to address the education emergency which is facing the children who have been deprived of learning opportunities. So many children have been deprived of this learning opportunity. We have to spend on these measures to bring these things up. And another thing is this is the good time to ask how much of public resources is being spent on technology and how effective it was during this pandemic, and when less than the 20% of the students could access even the pre-recorded videos. This is what happened. So everything has to keep in mind while giving this. So that's why this budget on education system, how much they are allocating to the education department, is very eagerly waited to see how much they are allocating in the budgets for the education system. This has been a very big debate, and this is how we need to frame an answer if something is asked on this budgeting for the education emergency. So many things are there which I have told you here. If you have any doubts and queries, just tell us in the comment section, and thank you so much for watching this video.